Hey peeps, as a Scrum Master, I used to feel like a failure when the daily Scrum overran the 15-minute time box. Today, I'll share 15 ways I've learned to keep my daily Scrum to 15 minutes. The first way to keep your daily Scrum in the time box is to make it easier for people to know when and where the event is held. The best way to do this is to have the daily Scrum at the same time and the same place each day. Just as the viewers of the old Batman show were instructed to tune in at the same bat time, same bat channel, there should be no doubts about when the daily scrum is held. Agree on the best time and place for the team, and then get this scheduled on everyone's calendars with a recurring invite that is set to never end. If you want to end on time, you need to start on time. There will always be that one team member that comes in dragging ass 5 to 10 minutes late. If your team holds the daily scrum first thing in the morning, this guy may even miss the whole event. Even if you're lucky enough to have your entire team show up on time, maybe the chatty Kathy of the group starts a detailed recitation about what she had for breakfast. No one cares what you had for breakfast, Kathy. If we do, we can wait until the 16th minute to hear the scrumptious details. Never heard of the 16th minute? Hang around and we'll get to it. Consistently start the daily scrum on time. We're all adults. We know where we're supposed to be and why. Let's start setting the expectation that we always start on time. When we stop waiting for Ron to show up, he'll make more of an effort to be on time. Now that we have everyone in the right place, we need to reinforce expectations for the event. It's all too easy to fall into a routine and go through the motions and lack an understanding of why we do things the way we do. This is sometimes referred to as zombie scrum. If we stop and take time to understand the value of each of our actions, there might be efficiencies to be gained. I once heard a story that's always stuck with me. A woman was teaching her daughter how to cook a particular cut of meat, and the very first step, she cut off a decent portion of the meat and discarded it. When the daughter asked why, the mom was perplexed. She'd always done it that way because that was the way her mom taught her. When the daughter asked the grandmother why they discarded a chunk of the meat, the grandmother replied, "I don't know why the hell your mom is doing it that way. I did it because my skillet is too small." One way to avoid a similar situation is to restate the purpose and goals of the daily stand-up when you first kick off the meeting. I use a variation of the following statement. We're all gathered here today to empower the team to make a plan for the next 24 hours with a focus on removing or escalating impediments. We've agreed to keep this meeting to 15 minutes or less to maximize time for deep work. And we've agreed to have our cameras on to increase communication and collaboration. With that, let's get started. Feel free to create your own spiel. It's helpful to have a couple of variations so that you don't start sounding like a broken record. Our fourth way to hold the daily scrum to its time box is to establish a format. Some teams prefer to let each team member take a turn speaking and finish when everyone has spoken. Other groups prefer to walk the board, which is a common phrase for talking about each active ticket on the board. The team may change the format from time to time to keep things fresh, but knowing how the meeting will run helps teams increase efficiency in two ways. First, they come better prepared for the event if they understand how they're expected to participate. Second, time is well spent discussing the work rather than determining what the team should cover or who needs to speak next. If we've followed the first four tactics, we should now have enough information to set some targets, which is our fifth tactic. Now that we know the format for the daily scrum, we know how many topics we'll need to cover each day. Do we have 5 people that need to speak or 9? Do we typically have 5 active tickets or 12? With these numbers, the facilitator can determine how many minutes we need for each topic and use this target to determine when we need to pick up the pace of the meeting to avoid daily scrum overrun. One way to increase the pace of a meeting is to interrupt conversations if they aren't relevant to the whole team or if they focus too heavily on problem solving. Once interrupted, we need to focus on assigning action items and determining who owns getting a resolution. We don't need to know the answer in the daily scrum. We need to know the plan to get the answer. I usually ask a question that implies the rest of this conversation will take place elsewhere. It might sound like this. Yo, Hermione, it sounds like you and Harry are progressing toward a resolution. Can you take responsibility for ensuring that this is resolved after Scrum and let the rest of the team know if you cannot come to an acceptable solution? Next, we'll hold the daily Scrum to a time box by interrupting long-winded speakers to ask about impediments. I'm going to pause here for a moment because my spidey senses tell me that some of you will not be comfortable interrupting others. You were taught as a child that this is rude behavior. Well, I'm here to tell you that you have a get out of jail free card when you're facilitating a meeting. You're not the one being rude when you interrupt someone who's droning on. The rambler is rude by monopolizing the team's time and putting the goals of the meeting at risk. Knee pads aren't rude when they protect your joints during falls, just like facilitators aren't rude when they protect the team's time to maximize their chances of accomplishing the event goals. Author Marshall Rosenberg succinctly sums this up in his book Nonviolent Communication by stating, "It's more considerate to interrupt people than to pretend to listen." All of us would like our words to enrich others and not burden them. We went down a bit of a rat hole here, so let's get back on track. This tactic is about interrupting the ramblers, focusing them on impediments, and moving on if there are none. This might sound like, "Sorry, Ron, I got a bit lost there. Did you say that you had some impediments? No? Okay. Hermione, would you like to go next?" Our next tip is also related to limiting discussion. We do this by deferring in-depth conversations to the 16th minute. The 16th minute is a common term to indicate the minute after the daily scrum ends. At that time, anyone needed for the discussion is already there, and team members that aren't required can go on about their business. Try asking, "This sounds like a valuable conversation, but may not need everyone. Can this be saved for the 16th minute?" Speaking of conversations that don't involve everyone, have you ever been in a meeting with a yacker who goes on and never gets around to saying anything of value? Even worse, they're oblivious to how this frustrates other team members. If you've ever felt like smacking a yacker, consider smacking the like button instead. It helps this video reach more people so that they too can learn tactics to prevent violence against yackers. Seriously though, consider asking your Scrum Master to coach the offenders on how to be more concise. If you are the Scrum Master, offer feedback to the individual in question and provide them with resources to help them learn concise communication. Our 10th way to enforce the daily Scrum's time box is to have a safe word or gesture that the team agrees to use when someone has been talking too long. Imagine, if you will, that you've been rattling on for a bit and you see 3 of your team members start to raise a pineapple sign. When the whole team has agreed to a sign, it makes it easier for people to point out when it's time to move on without the fear of feeling rude. If we're running short on time, focusing on impediments will allow us to accomplish one of the main goals of the daily scrum. If all impediments have been cared for, most anything else can be handled offline or in the next daily scrum. If you see that you're down to the last few minutes and the team isn't going to finish within the time box, halt the conversation and ensure that any remaining impediments have time to be addressed. We can avoid getting into the weeds. We need to understand who owns the next steps and whether they need help. If you want to end the daily scrum at the 15-minute mark, just do it. Most daily scrums overrun because the team's ultimate goal is to make it to the end of the agenda or bring all of the discussions to a close. If instead you aim to end the meeting on time, then you simply end the meeting on time. Another technique that should be obvious but teams often overlook is to bring the issues to the team during the retrospective. If they agree it's a problem, work collaboratively to find ways to change your process or working agreements to help keep the event efficient. If the Scrum Master is empowered to enforce the time box, the meeting should end when they say it ends. As long as they say it ends on time, we're golden. Establish a working agreement that allows team members to leave at the 15-minute mark if they don't feel the meeting is valuable. I've heard this referred to as voting with your feet, as back in the old days before we were all working remotely, you'd use your feet to leave the meeting. My final tip for avoiding daily scrum overrun is not to be a RoboCop. What do I mean by this? Well, some of us get too caught up in blindly following the rules of Scrum. While the Scrum Guide does state the daily scrum is a 15-minute event for the developers of the Scrum team, the last time I checked, no one gets decapitated if the meeting runs over. It's not the responsibility of the Scrum Master to be the Scrum police. The Scrum Master is accountable for the Scrum team's effectiveness. Step back and ask, is the team still effective when the daily scrum overruns? In other words, is the team getting value from the extended event? My former boss always said, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, which is just a weird expression for an avoidable error in which something good or of value is eliminated when trying to get rid of something unwanted. I'd much rather have a 30-minute daily scrum that ends with a team having a solid plan than a 15-minute daily scrum that ends with many confused and frustrated team members. All knowledge is built one piece at a time. If you'd like another piece, watch this video on the 3 standard questions and how this common approach might be holding your team back. I'll see you over there. Cheers.